Hello, everybody. I'm so excited to have you here. And we are going to be talking about friendships today, sort of the need for them and then building them as neurodivergent humans. So as soon as Ellie gets the slide up, we will start moving forward. Um, the way that I like to present is I love info dumping, but also I really love when people can be participatory. I'm going to keep an eye on the chat as best I can, but if people want to sort of share insights or anything, please let me know. Um, this is something that um, I'm presenting on, but also like my whole team helped with. I really love doing more like collaborative work with the neurodivergent community to try to get multiple perspectives and multiple needs, since research is a little slower than lived experience on things like this. So let's go to our next slide. A little bit about me and my intersections. I was only diagnosed as autistic last year. Prior to that, I was just self-diagnosed, which is kind of hard. I'm going to read slides and then expound on them just to increase the accessibility for others. So I'm white, I have a Master of Social Work, I was late diagnosed autistic, I'm femme, queer, and polyamorous. I'm the parent of two teenagers who are autistic and ADHD. I'm the primary earner for my family, married to a cis man, the first in my family to graduate with a bachelor's degree. I was born in the US. I grew up speaking English. I come from a working class family of origin. My adverse childhood experiences scores 9. And I have chronic illnesses, a history of anorexia, no military experience, and I'm independently housed. Let's go to the next one. So just what to expect for today. We're going to talk a little bit about why affirming friendships and community matters so much. Some typical friendship advice. Learning about having friendships outside of the box. And then we're going to have some discussion in the conclusions. So to start off, why the friendships matter. So there's a lot of research around perceived social support. And so perceived social support is like, it's not necessarily that I can logistically be picked up from the side of the road at 2 o'clock in the morning. It's that I'm driving around in the middle of the night, knowing that people have my back, knowing that I'm safe, I have resources. When we have those in 3 categories, a significant other, which can be a best friend, friends, and family, we have both positive mental health effects and also measurable physical health effects. Something that's a little trickier for the neurodivergent community is that a lot of us don't have supportive family. And just to be clear, I'm sort of just going over these, but not reading them verbatim. I'm going to go back to the things to consider in neurodiversity community and read it verbatim. Many neurodivergent humans do not have supportive family of origin and need to find chosen family. Many neurodivergent humans are still trying to find friends and community by masking and therefore unable to find authentic connections. Neurodivergent humans often have an uncalibrated people picker and not sure who to trust. And neurodivergent humans are often more vulnerable in not knowing who to trust. So I want to just highlight the concept of a people picker. This is something that a phrase that I use to sort of talk about when we've come out of complex trauma or a lifetime of masking. I think of our people picker as just maxed out at 11. So if I decide that I want to start having vulnerable and authentic relationships with people, my people picker is at 11. Everybody seems dangerous. I'm going to possibly choose the people that will be dangerous to me because I can't tell who's safe and who's not. And then that's going to reinforce the schema that everybody's dangerous. Let's go to the next slide. So this is sort of in reference to the research that I'd mentioned. This is the multidimensional scale of perceived social support. And what I'd like now is I'd like for you to just take a minute to reflect. I'm going to read each of these and think of how you would respond to the prompts. Very strongly disagree, mildly disagree, neutral, mildly agree, and very strongly agree. Again, this is the scale that the research has been based on related to the 3 domains that I was mentioning earlier. So number 1, there is a special person who is around when I am in need. 2, there is a special person with whom I can share joys and sorrows. 3, my family really tries to help me. 4, I get the emotional help and support I need from my family. 5, I have a special person who is a real source of comfort to me. 6, my friends really try to help me. 7, I can count on my friends when things go wrong. 8, I can talk about my problems with my family. 9, I have friends with whom I can share my joys and sorrows. 10, there is a special person in my life who cares about my feelings. 11, my family is willing to help me make decisions. And 12, I can talk about my problems with my friends. When we're scoring this, we are looking at both sort of the subscales, which are the families and friends and significant other. We can also look at the sort of the total score and identifying the highest score is high perceived support, a medium perceived support, or a low perceived support. I've used this scale a lot in couples work, in family systems work, where I got the feeling that everybody was incredibly depleted, and I had the caregivers do this. And oftentimes, one caregiver would say, all I have is a significant other. And the other caregiver would say, I don't have anybody that I feel this for. So I think that this is a good just sort of way to just sort of do a gut check of like, you know, who's filling me up? And am I going to places that are dry wells when I'm looking to get a drink? Let's go to the next slide. So I Googled how to make friends from the internet, and WebMD told me some very specific things on how to make friends. And I'd really love for you to just listen to me say these and notice what comes up for you. So this was, you can Google and look at the WebMD link, but it is very specific step-by-step on how to have friends. And so first we have say yes, accept invitations, and then return the favor with another, like an invitation to coffee or lunch. Take the initiative. You don't need to wait for people to come to you, even if you're an introvert. Start the conversation. Share something about yourself. Show interest. Ask the right questions. Smile. Make eye contact and smile. Share. Share small things progressively and don't go overboard. Do a small favor. Small acts of kindness often lead to connection. And keep in touch. Exchange numbers and keep it going. So I want to, I don't know if anybody has some big feelings about that they would like to share. But I have some things of like what doesn't feel good to me or our team about those. So I'm going to go through that. So say yes. Saying yes to whatever is asked of me is really encouraging This encourages us to ignore our own interception, intuition, and boundaries. I'm not allowing myself to give me like the space to understand if that would be a good activity for me or with those people. Take initiative. We often don't have the capacity to know who would be a good fit for us and need support with. We need support with our people pickers. Start the conversation. If we have only learned to script small talk, then we're going to read weird to neurotypicals like the uncanny valley and read as unsafe or unrelatable to neurodivergence. We are not going to be our authentic selves because the only skills that we've learned are the scripted small talk. Show interest. Masking us teaches us to center the other and create a one-sided relationship. If all I'm worried about is reading the other person and pleasing them, then the relationship is going to be only centered on them. And it's possible that they are going to feel incredibly close and heard and seen by me, but I will not feel the same for them. Smile and make eye contact. When we're told to do this, we can often do it too much, and it's alarming to others or perceived as sexual interest leading to dangerous situations. We're really good. Neurodivergents are often very good at following rules, and if we're told to do that, we're going to do that all the time. And so active listening skills of leaning forward, making eye contact, smiling are also the same cues that people have for if somebody is sexually interested in them and can lead to a lot of confusion. Share. Knowing what to share and how much is an overwhelming ask and is about making other people like me rather than getting my own needs met. Do a small favor. Many neurodivergent humans are already very generous and vulnerable to being taken advantage of. It is often that we believe people when they tell us things, and it does not occur to us that people would manipulate us. And so money, financial manipulation, and vulnerability, but also sexual, and any other of violating your own boundaries or your own needs to meet the needs of others. And keep in touch. Many male-presenting neurodivergent humans are accused of stalking or not taking the hint. I've come across this a lot. I know that it happens with not just male-presenting people, but it seems that the reaction for a misunderstanding in trying to keep up and trying to continually ask to go out to events or do something is perceived as a much more dangerous thing when people are male-presenting. So in making friends, the first thing that that we think is really helpful is getting to know yourself. So what are some of your likes? What gives you the ick? What depletes you? What gives you energy? What do you notice in yourself when you have a social event scheduled in advance? What do you associate with spontaneity? What are your preferred forms of communication? Do you like one-on-one time? How do you feel in small groups? What about large groups? What is an icebreaker that has irritated or overwhelmed you? How do you respond to unexpected changes? Do you notice yourself typically organizing or following others? Why do you think this is? What sensory input is often annoying or overwhelming? And what input brings you sensory joy? And then we've listed out some sensory needs. So this is an element that I think is incredibly important because for multiple factors, one is that we are not going to be able to actually connect if our physiological responses are escalated. And so knowing what kind of groups, what kind of interactions, what kind of sensory needs, how can we take care of ourselves is a really good base in going into an activity where we're going to have vulnerability and connecting with another person. So things listed here is touch, hugs or cuddles, firm touch, light touch, walking barefoot, proprioception, jumping, lifting, popping or clicking fidgets, eating crunchy foods. Auditory, being in loud environments, listening to loud music, background noise, verbal instructions. Vestibular, spinning, swinging, balancing, being up high. Taste and smells, like strong odors, smelling items, eating new foods, and eating familiar foods. And vision, like shiny objects, reading, bright lights, and dim lights. One of our clinicians, Sapide, has said that like they often think of it as like, what are your outdoor interests and what are your indoor interests and what do you like to do and what would you like to do with other people? Really thinking of like, you don't need to say yes to everything. You can say yes to things that feel good for you and finding people that think that that feels good as well. And then here is sort of just a page from our escalation cycle worksheet. We'll have this as one of the resources to follow up with later. But understanding your own escalation cycle is incredibly important. What does it feel like when we are at our baseline? When we are at our baseline, the whole brain is functioning in a way that we're able to think and process information in a way that feels good to us. Our body feels at home and grounded. And there are a lot of activities or sensory items that may just activate our physiological arousal and make it difficult for us to enjoy ourselves, to connect with humans authentically, and to do all of those elements. Additionally, like it's nice to know what helps you feel better so that you can let your friends know what they like. I love it when I get hugs and snuggles and hot chocolate. A lot of other people just want to be left alone and to be trusted that they'll come out and they'll re-engage when they're ready. We can't just make assumptions about what other people want or that they're going to be able to read our minds. So that leads me to the platinum rule. We treat others the way they want to be treated. And we are all responsible to communicate our own boundaries. We are not responsible to read other people's minds. The way that I describe this is that it's your job to tell me how to treat you. It's my job to listen. And it's my job to tell you what my boundaries are. I don't have to meet every need that you have, but I can help you problem solve how to get those needs met. But I'm not responsible for your feelings. Which is something that I think is a really difficult element for neurodivergent people that have tried very hard to just have everybody like them. And these are some places that we just sort of brainstormed around potential settings to meet new people, both online or in person. I know sort of historically there was a lot of providers that I've heard say online friendships are not real friendships. I feel like that's dissipated somewhat, but I still feel like it's fairly present. And I want to say online friendships are real friendships. We're not going to have sort of like categories of what's real and what's not. A real friendship to me is like, do I feel seen and affirmed? I use the term kindred spirit because I really resonated with Anne of Green Gables. Do I feel like I can relax my nervous system? Do I feel like I'm grounded? Do I feel like this is my kindred spirit that I don't have to perform for? And we can meet those people in meetups. There's a lot of meetups that are more structured with parallel play activities like board game meetups or Dungeons and Dragons or something that's familiar to you that you can do with other people. Affinity or shared interest groups. There's a lot of spaces that are sort of for specific intersections. Neurodivergent BIPOC people, femmes, late diagnosed, nerd-centric spaces, like the kind of gaming stores where you can sit and play games and do some parallel play that often starts just at least sort of comfort being around other people and moving into engagement. Queer spaces, there is a huge overlap of neurodivergent people and queer people. And so looking in queer spaces for neurodivergent or kindred spirits, if that's your intersection, is a really great place. Uh, and we listed out the Lex app and queer bookstores. Kink spaces, again, another big overlap for neurodiversity, as a lot of neurodivergent humans are also kinky. This can be something that is both sort of sexual, but also like if you think about kink as sensory input, there might be a lot of people that would consider themselves more vanilla who like sort of like the sensory that kink can offer. And that can also be a place that they can meet people that have their same overlap of interest or desire in the sensory elements. And online forums for neurodivergent folks like Reddit, Discord. There's one that I really like on Facebook. Just spaces where like you're going to meet your people. Go to the next one. So just a little bit about our people pickers. So how to pick who we want to start a conversation with. First, we need to recognize that our people picker is wonky, and where we have vulnerabilities. I will say just for me, this was a really, really hard one, that I was vulnerable. I had a lot of people try to tell me in very loving ways that I was vulnerable without being dismissive of my intelligence or my understanding of the world. And it took me until fairly recently to acknowledge I am vulnerable. I believe people when they tell me things. I see the best in people. My people picker is set to people are dangerous, and everybody can be a friend at the same time. And so knowing how to look for external stimuli is really important. Second point on here is we need to learn what our needs are. So it's really hard to know what our needs are when we've been focused so much on getting other people to like us. Look to other relationships, including therapeutic relationships, to learn what feels good and what makes us feel seen. From here, we can learn to translate this to other relationships. One of the things that I like to focus on in the therapeutic space is most of the people that I've worked with have never had a secure attachment before. They don't know what it feels like. And it's a wonky space to sort of practice it because we're in this like, I really care about you, but we only exist in this one sort of professionalized space. But we can practice secure attachment there. We can practice rupture and repair. We can practice getting needs met. We can practice advocating. We can practice all of those things. And then they can take what feels good and advocate for that in other relationships or seek that out with other people. This is just some ideas of like how to start a conversation once we pick somebody that we think could be a kindred spirit. Is accept that it's okay to be weird, and this will help you find your kindred spirit. It's okay for us to be weird. It's okay to be ourselves. I talk a lot about sort of I'm going to paraphrase a quote that I can't remember the author of right now, but we can put it in the resources. That it's not that it's hard work hammering a square peg into a round hole, it's that you ruin the peg. And what I take from that is I'm cutting off all of my beautiful edges of my star to try to conform to what I think other people want that will be lovable. But if I can accept my own shape, then even if somebody points out that I have big feet or something that I think is maybe not a super great factor, it's okay. It's part of me. And being able to be weird and comfortable with being weird is good, because the other element is that I've had a lot of clients over the years who do a lot of work masking. And then when they look for who am I going to try to connect with, they look for the popular person. They look for the people who are the brightest and shiniest that they imagine are the most well-adjusted that they want to be like. And then they try to connect with them, but they're connecting in a space that is not authentic. And then in starting the conversation, I think it's really helpful to just state your intentions and not worry about sort of the logistics of small talk or any of those other elements. So for me, this has been like, I've gone up to people and said, I don't know, like in comedy spaces, I'll say like, oh, I really loved your set. I'd love to spend more time together, maybe do some writing and support each other in comedy. Or I just think you're really interesting and I'd love to get to know you more. And sometimes this is met with people not wanting to engage with me, and that is an indicator that I thought that that was a kindred spirit, but that's not the person for me. It's sort of my test balloon. So I also want to highlight what it is for rejection sensitive dysphoria or guilt around boundaries. So part of finding healthy relationships is learning what relationships are not a good fit. But learning that someone doesn't want to continue a relationship with us can trigger the rejection sensitive syndrome or tender wounds from the past. And when we've been taught explicitly or implicitly to mask for the comfort of others, we often feel guilt about setting our own boundaries or disappointing others. I will just say that I've done a lot of work on this, and I still can get a physiological response just thinking about making people upset with me and people not liking me. It is something that I was trained to do. Do whatever it takes, no matter how uncomfortable, to make people like you. So strategies to manage discomfort and take steps towards healthy relationships is take time and space to observe your body and thoughts. Try asking yourself, if I were not afraid of the consequences, what would I really want? Remember, the wave of discomfort will pass. And talk with a trusted support about difficulties with rejection, guilt, or boundaries. So if you're up for it, I would love to have a discussion. What typical friendship skills have you found unhelpful or harmful? And what tips, tricks, and skills have supported you in building affirming and mutual friendships? I'm looking away to look in the chat. Is there anybody that has something that they would really like to share with everybody verbally? This is somebody remarked that the how to make friends, it says, through a neurodivergent lens, it's less of how to make friends list, but how to mask list. Absolutely. There's some really great things in here about icebreakers. Icebreakers are terrible. I think that they I understand the purpose of them, but I think that like separating need versus service, I don't think that the service is really supports our kinds of interactions. And unless it allows us to info dump about our special interests, because I do think that that would be a great icebreaker among neurodivergents. We got a comment that I think about all the messages that we get from society about friendship that are wrong and not helpful to neurodivergent humans. Yeah, it's really painful. I've had discussions consistently in sessions with people who had learned typical friendship skills growing up, and then they're in their midlife and they have no community and they feel so alone. And I had a conversation with someone where I just suggested parallel play. I said, you have a craft that you like to do. Your friend is an artist. What if you just sat in the same room and both did those? And the person was just blown away that that was even an option. The idea that like we don't even know what our options are to engage with each other in ways that feel good to us, I think is one of the worst parts. That we don't even know what we can ask for, what we can hope for from connections with other people. Zach says, I found eye contact to be a pretty useless skill. Yeah, I will say that I have led a lot of people to the impression that I'm in love with them, which is really awkward when like everybody at the grocery store thinks that you're in love with them. I don't even know how to walk that one back because it feels so confusing. I have just been asked by a client to tell whether, according to their description of experiences, if it was love or not, and I could not. Oh, I'm really feeling that. I've read sort of things online anecdotally and heard from people that it's so hard to know if somebody likes us or they're flirting with us, or that we often will just respond to people that love bomb us. And if it's a neurodivergent person who's being authentic and they're just being very honest and candid uh, about like how they feel about us, then that's wonderful. But again, sometimes people are manipulative, and that's not always our first thought. Um, I've known people who've had success with changing their Bumble BFF profiles to have something about autism or neurodivergence in it from the get-go, so it doesn't have to feel like there's a big reveal later, or so they attract neurokin and don't have to feel obligated to explain away their quirks. Of course, this comes with risks too. There's also an app that I don't know how to pronounce it. I'm gonna say Hickey. It's Hiki, and it's specifically an app for neurodivergent people to find each other. It started specifically for autism, and now it's sort of opened the umbrella to all neurodivergent humans. Yes, Britt, Hickey.
I can speak for like maybe it wasn't one of the friendship skills that was listed on this awesome PowerPoint, by the way. But something that came up for me was like the cool girl mask, where you're like being really easygoing and like because that's and I mean it's not a typical friendship skill, it'd be like agreeable, like don't be argumentative. Like I feel like that's incredibly harmful. Um because once you, I mean, and I, you know what, and it's not just, I said cool girl, but it's a part of me that doesn't like I even said it like that because I have a lot of male, whatever that means, clients who also have that same kind of feeling of like, I don't want to be a problem. I don't want to cause a conflict. So just like, that's maybe not a typical friendship skill, but because of rejection, sensitivity, whatever that we all have, I just think it is just masking from the get-go of like I can't speak for what I need because then they won't like me. I'll be difficult.
Absolutely. The way that I perceive relationships, I felt really aligned when I first read the Relationship Anarchy Manifesto, because I don't really, as a neurodivergent, and this is common with people that I know, but I don't really understand the difference between platonic and romantic love or connection. I want to buy my friends flowers and take them out to dinner and do one-on-ones with them. And so it's really confusing for me when there's rules. I had a friend who told me that I'd sort of mentioned watching a movie and snuggling, and he's like, "Oh no, I can't do that. I've got a girlfriend now." And I was like, "Oh, we can't snuggle and watch a movie anymore? Okay, is there anything else that we can do? Or we can't do?" And he said, "Yeah, we can't have long hugs." And I said, well, how many seconds is a long hug? And then he got really frustrated. But I was being so earnest that I don't even know what that means. And the way that I sort of like when I'm interested in connecting with somebody, I ask them to sort of like think about what they're open to, because I like to think of it more like a Venn diagram, is that the connection that I want to have with somebody is where we intersect. That's what feels most authentic and most good for me. So um, when I've presented that to people, sometimes I've gotten excitement, but nobody's ever asked them that before. Nobody's ever provided that, like, we can just see where we intersect and just live in that intersection. But some people get really frustrated. And like you were saying, Britt, like I've gotten a lot like, why can't you just go with the flow? Well, because I need to know what to expect. And then they tell me, like, why do I have to try to plan everything? Um, but if you're open to a platonic friendship with your rules around what platonic means, or you're open to a romantic or sexual relationship with your parameters of what that means, I don't, my brain can't go with the flow and switch between those. I need to know what to expect in any of those camps. I don't need you to plan everything, but I do need to know where your intentions are. And that's really difficult because there is a lot of rejection with that. So got a comment. I found that being really open about my access needs for social engagement has been really helpful. Like I need at least 2 to 3 days notice to prepare for social hangouts. And I can usually cannot accept social invites that are last minute. Oh, I love this. I don't like big surprises. So when people have stopped by my work to surprise me and then I'm not delighted that they're there, and then their feelings get hurt and my feelings get hurt because I've told them that I don't like surprises and I feel now like I'm responsible for their sadness. What a disaster. um, Flexibility is super essential to maintaining meaningful connections for me. Neurospicy brains need time to process. Sometimes they can't be predicted. Empathizing and practicing perspective taking honestly goes hand in hand with this. Neurodivergent communities have been healing my relationship with this. Yeah, I think that one of the things about the therapeutic relationship that I think is really helpful, not just from an attachment theoretical standpoint and super attachment, but also just modeling. I like to sit on the floor and do puzzles during sessions. We have a fully stocked like kitchen with snacks and drinks and things like that. We are constantly modeling getting our own needs met and having space for them to state their needs and get their needs met. And I feel like that can only really happen in intentional spaces, which right now are in neurodivergent spaces. Um, and a comment, oof, why can't you just fill in the blank? Is one of the hardest phrases for me to hear from others. Yeah, it's so painful. It's so painful to not understand ourselves enough in general when we're trying to sort of like build our identity and our identity formation when we are in all of these spaces that are just teaching conformity and masking skills. To then when we first start stating what our needs are, to have somebody meet us with sort of that comment of why can't you just do something that we are incapable or shouldn't do because it's too much. We've got a hand raised. Ready?
Yeah, hi. Um, I was just thinking a little bit more about the visual that you had shared about which, which interactions make me feel positive, which friendships do I value, and like what kind of spaces foster those kinds of connections. It reminded me of this conversation that if anyone's familiar with How to ADHD on YouTube, she has a whole channel specifically on ADHD, but I do think it applies to other developmental and intellectual disabilities. But she has a video, it's just called How to Friend, and it kind of explores that a little bit more, that concept of we're so indoctrinated as neurodivergent people with the messaging that you have to mask, and then you're an adult now and you get to choose your friendships. And yeah, it's a really cool video. I would recommend checking it out. But yeah, I wanted to ask, is this presentation available somewhere for us to reference?
Yeah, so we are going to put this on our YouTube channel.
Awesome. Thank
We
you.
will also email it to everybody that's here with resources. And then do you mind putting the link to the video in the chat, and then we can add it to our resources?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate
Of
that.
course.
We have another comment that says, I always had a difficult time understanding social wait times. Like, you can't reach out to someone too soon after establishing a connection because it might come off as too eager or too intense. Yes. Oh, I will say that not only in friendships have I experienced this, but also just in professional contexts. I was told by somebody that I had too many ideas that were breaking people's brains, and that I need to think of one idea to present to them a week so that I didn't overwhelm them because it was just too much. My brain worked too fast, and that I should just keep a list to myself. And I was like, but my list will keep growing because I always have ideas. It seems unsustainable to me. Before we wrap up, does anybody have some like last comments or suggestions or resources for the community? If you don't feel comfortable being in the recording, you can just put it in the chat, or after we turn off the recording, you can put it in the chat then. I'd love a comment in here of the like, take the initiative, but not like that. Yeah, it is so hard, those elements of how to be when we're told how to mask. The instructions are incredibly they lack specificity, or we are at our own specificity to create something that is not what the neurotypical is looking for. I've been able to have this experience where I have two children who were in their late teens. One is male and assigned male at birth. The other one is agender and assigned female at birth. My male child was able to get assessed and diagnosed at the age of 3. And I've been trying to get my other child, who's 16 now, assessed since they were 2 years old. They still have not been assessed. Well, they have, but the meetings have been like preliminary with, what were your grades last year? Oh, you got straight A's? And I don't think that you're impacted. Because my son had externalizing behaviors and my other child didn't. So it's really easy to know that something's up if somebody's biting you repeatedly, which my child did. But it's hard if they're just internalizing it. So what this meant for friendships and communication was that my son had interventions through school and other places since the age of 3. And my other child didn't. My child who didn't have those interventions has a really solid core friend group of other neurodivergents. But my son learned how to mask, and he's still learning how to unlearn that and how to have other fulfilling relationships. And my heart sunk the day that my younger child came up and said, I don't understand why he tries to talk to me with small talk. I hate small talk. That feels bad to me. And I said, he's trying to connect. And my other child said, well, I wish that he would connect more like an autistic, because that's what feels good to me. And I realized that my kid had been trained to not know himself enough to communicate like an autistic with other autistics, which puts him in the uncanny valley with neurotypicals, but also just makes it uncomfortable because the friendship skills that he's been taught over his whole lifetime are not to connect with people like him. comment in the chat. Small talk doesn't have to be small. Yeah, I mean, like if you want small talk that's immediately going to go into the meaning of life and existential crises, then that's the kind of small talk I'd be into. So, to close this up, we have some resources here. We have the Mask and Self-Assessment by Autism and Level Up, a Support Needs Assessment by Autism Level Up, the Sensory Checklist by Lindsay Beal, Sensory Friendly Space Checklist by Bridges Learning Resource, Love is Respect, which sort of like helps us look for what are green flags in relationships, what are things that we can look for to expect. And then Matt Lowry's name page, and we're also going to include the escalation cycle worksheet that we've created. Britt, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to say this is such a healing type of like I guess lecture, didactic, like what you just went through of like us like of modeling what a conversation about connection can look like just felt so healing to me as like an individual, but like just for the fact that like hope of like, oh, this is what we can be doing with our kids, with our adults, with everybody. Like this is what needs to be taught in schools. Like this is it. There's just connection, like being authentic and what does it mean to connect? Like what social emotional learning can really look like. You know, in Colorado, there was I don't know if it's still running, I'm sure it is, but when they made weed legal in like 2014, all that money went towards social emotional learning specialists in middle schools and high schools in Colorado. And that basically meant they hired like a counselor or a social worker to like go into all the classrooms and do these like kind of macro level lessons about social emotional learning. And like, what would the impact have been if this is the type of thing that they were teaching to everybody? So I don't know, I just want to say thank you. Like, just felt like a really beautiful healing moment to just be like, we got this. Like, this is what is, when it's done right, this I can do with my clients, I can do with my groups, and we can take this, and this is what the future is.
Britt, I mean, you're always a delight, but you just warmed my heart so much. You just make me so happy. This is something that I've been thinking about for a long time. That's been really painful for me to just talk with my clients and community about, is how isolated we feel, and how wrong we often feel, that there's something about us that needs to be fixed before we're lovable. I fundamentally disagree with you have to love yourself before you can be loved by somebody else. Like I can be lovable while I'm healing. That is a schema that I think is difficult and keeps us from engaging with others, or keeps us from being vulnerable, because it makes us think that like we have to be perfect before we can be lovable. Oh, and there is a is this ready? Is this did you present the link for SCS for Colorado?
Yeah, I just shared that resource in the chat if anyone wants to look over the like research and the study they published. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Yeah, such a delight. If you have more that you would want to include in just resources when we send this out, so that people who aren't able to be here can get more from this, then please let me know. Thank you so much. We're going to stop the recording and transition.